All right, welcome back everybody to the second panel of the day, where we will be diving a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of collective action. It was great to see this morning in the opening panel the discussions from the government's perspective, and also to hear about some of those initiatives and hear the discussion about collective action and its importance. And I think it's a very nice transition into talking about collective action towards talking to collective action initiatives, which is what this panel is going to be all about. So I'm very lucky to be here with an excellent group of panelists, both representing sort of the historic weight of collective action as a concept, as well as a number of long-standing anti-corruption collective action initiatives that have really truly stood the test of time, that have gone through multiple different iterations of evolutions and developments over the years to get them where they are today, and we really look forward to learning and hearing from them in this panel. Collective action can, I think, no longer be described as new and innovative. It's been a little bit too long that it's been around, but I think it's important as we talk to some of the initiatives that are involved in collective action to see that through innovative and new ideas and new initiatives and evolution of initiatives, the concept continues to evolve as such and continues to remain innovative and new through the initiatives that it encompasses. But before we kind of jump into that, I would like to take a little bit of a step back to look at where we've come from over the last sort of 15, 16, maybe even 20 years when it comes to the journey of anti-corruption collective action. And for that, I'm very privileged to be able to hand over to Lisa Miller, who's the head of integrity and compliance at the World Bank Group and has been a big sort of supporter of anti-corruption collective action over the years, just to kind of remind us of how far we've come over the years, also where it all started, the evolution, and also, of course, why anti-corruption collective action remains an important anti-corruption tool from the perspective of the World Bank. So it's a pleasure to have you here with us. Over to you, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Scarlet. It's very nice to be here. So Scarlet asked me to speak about how far collective action has come in the past 15, 16, or 20 or so years. And I must say I was a bit surprised. Because, I mean, given my obvious youth, I thought, what can I know going back 20 years? So I did some research. I looked into, how did collective action, how did the concept really arise? And it started as an idea. It started as a discussion. And it was a discussion around what might this look like? Who might be involved? How might we develop a collective action initiative? And so initially, there was this concept. It was a concept of how might like-minded people get together and organize, join forces to fight corruption. The thought that was that such cooperation could do a few things. It could increase the impact and credibility of individual actions. It could perhaps enhance competitiveness and level the playing field among competitors. There was a thought that it might provide more transparency in how procurements were run. It was thought that it could contribute to expectation setting in the integrity space, which was still relatively new at that time. And there was also a thought that it could provide a platform for companies of all sizes and for stakeholders from various sectors to get together and try to promote these anti-corruption efforts. And so now all of these thoughts and aspirations have been realized to a great extent, in my view. And it's demonstrated that a lot of these anticipated outcomes have actually come to fruition over the years. So these individuals and organizations have actually leveraged their collective convening power to more effectively fight corruption. And we'll hear several examples of how organizations have been doing that from the other speakers. So collective action has moved from initial stages where you saw things such as integrity pacts or corporate anti-corruption declarations. And that was a great place to start. But often in those cases, so much of the quote-unquote effectiveness relied on trust. There weren't always enforcement mechanisms or monitoring mechanisms. So companies could say, yes, I commit to these principles, but there wasn't often a lot behind that other than good sentiment. So now we've moved from that good sentiment more to actual action and enforceability, where we see collective action initiatives that put forward joint policies and procedures, codes of conduct that have in place collective reporting mechanisms and enforcement mechanisms. So that, to me, that shows the tremendous progress that has been made into how these programs actually have become more effective. So what really had been this innovative, as Scarlet mentioned, an aspirational concept has now evolved into a well-accepted best practice among various stakeholders. You have private sector, you have governments, you have international organizations, CSOs, NGOs, academia, and they're all working together to push to reduce the risk of fraud and corruption in our global business operations and government operations. And before, you often saw the focus on these collective action initiatives being with large companies. And increasingly, we are seeing the collective action initiatives bringing on board SMEs and including SMEs in these activities. And to me, that is a critical development because SMEs are disproportionately affected by corruption. They often lack the resources to put in place effective anti-corruption measures. So for them, they not only can benefit from these types of collective action initiatives, but they also have a lot to contribute based on their own experience. And so I find that to be a really important evolution over the years. And I also just want to note, because we are here, again, discussing collective action, that I don't want to minimize the importance of continuing the discussions, the awareness-raising activities, the training activities, the capacity-building activities, because that is critically important, in my view, to make some of these initiatives sustainable. So now to the second question Scarlet asked me to address, and that was, why is it important to address corruption from a World Bank Group perspective? So the answer that we often say in our multilateral development bank world is, we have an obligation, a fiduciary obligation, to ensure that the funds that we loan for development projects are used for their intended purpose. And of course, that is one of the reasons why we strive to fight against corruption in World Bank Group finance projects. But I think it goes beyond that. So the World Bank has as its mission to end extreme poverty and boost shared prosperity on a livable planet. And so corruption contributes to poverty by impeding development goals and perpetuating inequities. Corruption also hampers sustainability. Good governance and business integrity, on the other hand, promote accountability, transparency, efficiency, and rule of law, and also encourage effective management systems across many areas. And all of those, in turn, contribute to equitable and sustainable development. So as such, anti-corruption efforts are key to achieving the World Bank Group's mission, and collective action efforts are a key element in those efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you also for managing to get so much of that history and experience into a quick 10 minutes. I really appreciate that. And also, of course, for the positive outlook as we look to the future and the continued importance of collective action. Now, to bring in my other panelists, as you see up here, they are representing three major collective action anti-corruption initiatives. And I think some of you might be somewhat familiar with one or the other. So in order to keep this really interesting interesting for all of us, I thought I would challenge my panelists a little bit to a different type of introductory round. That's also in line with what we're trying to kind of really hone in on in the session, which is looking at the variety and the evolution and the processes of these initiatives. So I've asked them, or challenged them, to give us a little bit of an elevator type pitch for their initiative. So if you're talking either to us or to other stakeholders that you'd like to reach, how would you, in a very quick and succinct way, sell, so to speak, your initiative, and why joining your initiative would be a good idea? For that, just to say, it is a bit of a slower elevator because we want to be reasonable and make sure that they're able to properly present their initiatives. So bear that in mind. So with that, I'd like to kick off with Georgia Melliger, who's Chief Legal Officer of Tenova and a long-standing member of the Metals Technology Transparency Initiative, Integrity Initiative, sorry. And let us know before you get and push the button on the elevator, who would you like to pitch your initiative to?
Okay, so first, I don't like confined spaces, so
Okay.
in doubt, I would take the stairs. And in order to take the stairs more swiftly, if I had to explain very quickly, maybe in a couple of sentences, to ideally our customers, meaning customers of Tenova market and Tenova competitors market, I would say that the thing that maybe characterizes our effort is to try to translate, try to decode the anti-corruption idea in business language. And in business language, it means that we are trying to achieve, through the collective action, a competitive advantage over other competitors in the market which do not belong to the initiative. That would be the crucial idea. So I call it the good cartel because companies do cartels in order to take advantage, but of course cartels are wrong and are poison for market. While this is completely the opposite. So that's why. And the competitive advantage ideally would become a sort of a label, a sticker, a color stick on the members of the collective action, as opposed to others, so that when they sell to the customers can rely on the fact that they will be competing purely on technology, on innovation, on the reliance of their products and services, maybe also on price, but not on other shady commercial practices. So that's the bottom line. But to do a step back, because we are a niche market, extremely niche market, I would like to briefly explain what is our market. We are only 4 members, and to explain what we do, I will talk about pasta. Everybody knows pasta. We are basically, pasta being steel, we are making cooking appliances to make pasta, okay? So spaghetti, macaroni, all the entire set. But we're selling the cooking appliances to make steel, so pasta. So the 4 members, which are 1 German member, 1 Nippon-Austrian member, 2 Italian members, strangely enough, in this very small market, have more than 80% of market share on a global level. So in persevering with this competitive advantage, we have tried to identify over the years. We started more or less 10 years ago with what we call verticals. So we have identified like third parties, like commercial consultant, intermediaries, engagement as a risk profile. Another risk profile is in relation to gifts and hospitality. Another one in relation to whistleblowing, and try to collect specific practices which apply not as a whole, but to our specific market segment. So the effort is to compete a little bit with ISO certification and try to identify something which is really peculiar to the initiative. Having said that, as I said, we are the smaller, the younger, and maybe the most niche, so I'm humbled to be here with other panelists who are actually having ongoing and have much more structure initiatives with other members, so I'm here especially to listen.
Super. Thank you. Can I get the mic? Super. Thank you so much, George. And I think you win over everybody when you started with the pasta reference. So that's fantastic. Let's hand over for a quick pitch from Jonas Erlandsen, who's the senior lead of South Asia Maritime Anti-Corruption Network. Let us know who are you pitching to and what are you pitching?
Thank you very much, Scarlet. This challenge was quite interesting to me because the challenge was, how do we pitch collective action initiatives to governments in the countries that we operate in? And for this to work, I need you in the audience to imagine this. You are the Minister of Maritime Affairs in a country, let's call it the Kingdom of Indonesia. The sitting government has a very high growth projection of 8% GDP and have promised to decrease the unemployment rate by 10 percentage points over a six-year tenure. And I, of course, will be arriving at your offices in this case. So, Honorable Minister, I am Jonas Erlandsen. I work with Maritime Anti-Corruption Network. Now imagine a maritime industry free of corruption. It's a dream of Maritime Anti-Corruption Network, and it might seem a bit far-fetched, but we have 215 members who believe the same. Those 215 members represent some of the largest cargo owners and ship owners in the industry, and together we represent 50% of the global fleet. What can maritime corruption do to a country? And I'm going to use Nigeria as an example. An independent study shows that 15% of the cost of transport in Nigeria in 2016 was due to corruption. Those 15% added has a knock-on effect on the consumers in the country for all bulk cargo. That includes food and edible oils. Excuse me, I'll take my notes here. For Nigeria, that number added to a total amount of $200 million US loss in GDP. That equates to 250,000 tax-paying jobs. Our data suggests that in Indonesia, there's a 1 in 5 chance that a ship calling your ports are met with a corrupt demand by public officials. How can we help? We can establish a grievance mechanism in collaboration with your authorities, like the one that we have in India, where we've up to date have resolved 35 incidents with a 100% success rate within 4 hours. We will establish collective action networks to spread awareness in the private sector, build in business integrity, and transparency in business conduct in your country. In Nigeria, the collaboration with government resulted in $130 million increase in GDP and the creation of 150,000 tax-paying jobs. So, thank you for your time, and to quote our CEO from last week, who you're going to call.
Super, thank you. I'll take off the hat of the minister for now. So let's sort of wrap this round of introductions up with handing over to Professor Dion Rousseau, who's joining us as the new chairperson of the Banknotes Ethic Initiative. Let us know, who are you pitching to and what are you trying to get the stakeholder involved in?
Thanks, Scarlet. Well, if you ever aspire to be a central banker, your moment has arrived. So I'm pitching to central bankers for a very specific reason, because in the banknote industry, there's only one customer. The ultimate buyers of banknotes are central banks. Now, despite the belief that we are moving towards a cashless society, there's still a positive net growth in the production of banknotes on a global basis. Central banks, of course, don't print banknotes. They procure them. And it can be done in one of two ways. Either you start your own banknote printing company, or you procure from commercial providers of banknotes. You can imagine, if you think about the process of banknote production, you need something to print on: paper, cotton, polymers, you need ink, you need security features, you need quality control, you need printing machines. So there's a lot of transactions going on, and whenever there are transactions either by your suppliers or between a supplier and a central bank, there's the possibility of corruption, there's the possibility of anti-competitive behavior. And that is where the Banknote Ethics Initiative comes in. It was established in 2013. The objective was to clean up the industry. As most anti-corruption collective action movements normally start, there was problems in the industry. It needed to be cleared up. And, of course, important also for central banks that this should be done, because it can cause huge reputational damage if there is a discovery of bribery or anti-competitive behavior. So the major players in the industry came together in 2013. They established the Banknote Ethics Initiative, and the first thing that a company does when it decides to join is to sign a code of ethical business practices. But paper is patient, as we know. Within 12 months after signing that code, you have to go through an audit. So the initiative developed its own audit standard by independent auditors who developed the standard, and within 12 months after signing a code or the code, you have to be audited, and that audit must be repeated every third year. In the interim years, you have to report on progress on findings that the auditors has made. So there's an annual check-in to see that you are still conforming to that code. Ultimately, there's an independent accreditation council who decide on the outcome of the audits and to ultimately decide whether a company will be accredited as BNEI certified. So, central bankers, what matters here is if you are interested in peace of mind when you procure banknotes, the Banknote Ethics Initiative is relevant to you. Because if you procure your banknotes from a company that has been certified by BNEI, you know that that company has a proper anti-corruption management system to detect and to prevent corruption, and you can thus rest assured that you won't be getting unpleasant surprises somewhere down the line that can embarrass you. And this is not a theoretical possibility, this is a real possibility, as some central banks around the world would testify that they have been involved in such incidences in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and for this introduction round that I think really enables us to kind of already sense this variety that I mentioned in the beginning. And the variety is not just that it's three very different sectors here. The variety is also the customers who you're trying to bring in, but also the communication on language of, like, it's very different talking to a minister than talking to maybe a competitor or to a customer in that way. So I think this has been a really nice way of sort of already highlighting that. And you know, we might be lucky, you might be able to get two birds with one stone if there's anybody in the room here that is part of those three sectors, so we'll see, maybe over lunch. But I want to move on from looking sort of at just the variety to the second part that we're discussing today in this panel, and that's the evolution, the development over the years. All of your initiatives have had years of experience at this point of coming together, and of course that has meant also hurdles, issues, opportunities for evolution and development, and it would be really great for you to share some of those with us. In the interest of time, if you could maybe pick out one sort of pivotal moment from your initiative or topic that stands out for you when it comes to the evolution or development of your initiative to hone in on, to make this as tangible and sort of practical as possible for all of us. So let's kick off this round with Jonas. What would you like to kind of share from the experience of MSN?
Yes, so I think we talked about this at the speakers' networking yesterday evening. It came up that we were one of the networks that were lucky enough to be established by 10 of the major players in the industry. So we already had an advantage to begin with in communicating to the industry. But I think some of the success stories that created this critical traction for us in the industry was when our name started coming up in conversations between the private companies that were non-members. And this came as a result of the collective action that was done in Nigeria and Suez Canal. Now we have prioritized collective action so high on our agenda that we have many countries. I think that must be the pivotal moment, and that's also why the cost of corruption survey has come out of that case in Nigeria. We released that last week, and I tried to incorporate some of the numbers in my pitch just now. So collective action is the pivotal moment for MACN.
And in terms of the evolution and involvement, looking towards more sustainability of the initiative, maybe if you could give us a bit of a sense of how that's developed over the years,
yes,
that would be
exactly.
Great.
Good, thank you. I missed that in my note as well. The sustainability of the collective action from our side, we are now since the Siemens Integrity Initiative has concluded on their funding rounds. We have, like many others, of course, have been looking for alternative sources of revenue. And for our day-to-day operations, we are lucky enough to have our solid membership base of companies. But we are offering e-learning. That's one of the ways we can sustain our initiative. We've created a new associate member category that will allow for SMEs to become members and will gain access to our 7 principles with our self-assessment and internal audit guidance, our frontline material, and so on. And then lastly, we are having our due diligence platform, 3C Diligence, that is also available to outsource your due diligence requirements. So we're looking at many sources of streams of revenue to sustain our collective actions.
So almost like diversifying towards sustainability for MSCN then in future.
Definitely.
Okay, fantastic. Handing over to Dion here for BNEI, are there any sort of pivotal moments in their development, and also where you're moving towards when it comes to the sort of years that the initiative has been active now, and maybe also some of the hurdles and how you were able to overcome them?
Yeah. As we sit here, we are actually crossing an important bridge. As I mentioned, the initiative started in 2013. There are 15 member companies, and they pay an annual membership fee. Now, when we started, as I said in my pitch just now, we developed an audit standard. So the foundational basis is a code of ethical business practice. That is the standard. But in order to ensure that people abide by the standard, we developed this audit standard plus an audit manual in order to ensure that there is compliance with the standard. But this happened 2013, in other words, 11 years ago. And I think there were three major developments that brought us to the point where we are now, and in the process of developing a second generation audit standard and audit manual. The first important development, and I know that other initiatives are also affected by that, was the introduction of the ISO 37001 standard, the Anti-Corruption Compliance Management Standard, in 2016. And when this standard was introduced, there was a perception that you have the BNEI standard and you have ISO 37001, and the one is like the other. So whether you are BNEI certified or whether you are ISO 37001 certified, it's the same thing. And we believe it's not the same thing, and that is the first stimulus for developing a new audit standard, to make it quite clear that the BNEI standard is an industry-specific standard and not a generic standard like ISO 37001, and that there are also much less flexibility when it comes to audit methodology when you are BNEI certified, while there's more flexibility in terms of ISO 37001. So that was the one stimulus. The second stimulus is that there was a certain issue that became quite controversial, and that is the payment of commission to agents. Now, right from the start, it was quite clear. It is part of that foundational code that says payments to agents or business intermediaries, or how you would like to call them, should always be appropriate and not excessive. But over time, the audit standard evolved to a point where a certain amount was linked to what is not excessive, or a certain percentage of a contract. And that specific rule that developed over time became controversial. Some people loved it, other people hate it. Some members love it, some members hate it. Those who love it says, well, it's now a level playing field, and if agents try to extort excessive remuneration, we can fall back on this and say, no, we are BNEI certified, and therefore we can't go above that level. However, others says a one-size-fits-all methodology does not work in a global market where there are different business models. For example, if you sell ink that is used in banknote printing, you would make several sales to one of your clients per year. But if you sell printing machines, you might sell one machine every 10 years to a client. So how do you make sure that it is still comparable? So that is why there's some resistance. And I think the third development that happened over the last 11 years was also changes in audit methodology, and that there's much more a shift to risk-adjusted audit nowadays compared to what it was 11 years ago. So as a result of that, we were able, in December last year, after long conversations, almost 2 years of deliberations that almost caused a crisis in the initiative, to decide on a common approach, and we've now approached 2 independent service providers to develop the second generation audit standard. And hopefully before the end of the year, we will be able to come to a point where we can adopt the new standard to take us forward.
Super, thank you, Dion. And it's also great to see that, collective action in action to overcome this potential crisis and be able to move forward. And of course, also the importance of that the members obviously know each other for a long time. And I'm assuming we're able to kind of also build a certain level of trust to help facilitate these discussions. So I want to hand over to Giorgio here to tell us a little bit about his experience. You were saying you were the youngest of the initiatives, but surely also gone through evolution and development. So tell us a little bit about what that's been like and what one of those sort of pivotal moments has been for the MTI initiative.
Yeah, not to be self-referential, but I have to say one of the pivotal moments was when Tenova actually joined the initiative. And I'll explain why. The initiative was initially founded by, so the founding members were probably the biggest of our competitors. They are called full liners. So to go back to the pasta comparison, just to grab your attention, full liners take care of the entire process of the pasta making, so from the dough actually to the lasagna or the macaroni, while Tenova doesn't make the entire process. So if you want to make lasagna, you're okay with Tenova. If you want to make spaghetti, fettuccine, and everything else, you have to go with the other ones, maybe. But for them, after 2 or 3 years of collective action, being a relatively, I would say, secret, and again, very niche market, they didn't feel their presence in the world, sort of. They were like, okay, what are we? And when Tenova actually went a full-blown interview process to access the collective action, I think it was a moment of sort of relief for the other 3 founding members, stating, okay, so we finally have somebody who wants to join the club, and that's very satisfying for the club. So I think that is in terms of maybe pivotal moment. Now, looking a little bit forward in terms of challenges, I think we have two sort of challenges. One, it comes from the fact from the competitive landscape, because as we said, in 4 companies we make mostly 80% of the market segment. If you take a specific, like certain, the typical kind of electric arc furnaces that is used to make steel, but the size, I mean, the fact that it's only 4 of us doesn't really allow that breadth that the initiative could take. All my fellow colleagues enjoy many members, which might create some challenges in terms of consensus, but it definitely increases the possibility to do stuff. When we are gathering, of course, we have the incredibly and invaluable help of the Basel Institute, who chairs and organizes all of our sessions, but it's us. I mean, there's nobody whose full-time job is to work for the initiative. So we don't have anybody that wakes up in the morning and says, okay, what shall we do about the initiative? Nobody. Not even, I think, at the Basel Institute, even if they are the one that we have to pay the most gratitude in order to develop the industry. So one challenge is in relation to competitors. So is it interesting and important for the initiative to expand to sort of, I mean, I don't want to diminish but to sort of second-tier competitors, which are maybe more locally based or have or can make even fewer kind of pasta with their machinery? Or is it okay like that, and we have to live with only four members? So that's one challenge and one big question. The other one is vis-a-vis our customers, our clients, because in this market, our customers are much more structured, bigger, larger, richer organization than we are. We are just small appliances makers. They are selling the real stuff, which is the pasta, which is the steel, and they are highly structured. So we have experienced a sort of, we were not appearing, frankly, and until now, we have not appeared in the radar of our customer. And I perceive that we are sort of competing with their purchasing department. So again, since they are so structured, so large, and so sophisticated, and so global as a company, and so rich, they're saying, by your initiative, are you questioning the way I do my purchasing? Of course, we don't want to go there, and that's totally not our intention. But we perceive a little bit, and we have perceived in some iterations in the past, on top of the ISO 37001 as a general certification, the fact of saying, what more are you bringing? What sort of increased qualification are you bringing more than our very skilled and very thoughtful purchasing department are bringing to the thing? So maybe the next pivotal moment will hopefully, and I knock on wood, be tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, because finally we have managed to involve our customers, our clients, and we are gathering actually after the finish here of the conference in a first round of confrontation, of listening, to explain them. We have asked the compliance managers of 5 big steel makers around the world to pitch them about the initiative and ask them, again, going back to the core concept of making of the initiative a commercial added value, a competitive advantage value. So in a commercial scenario, what you do, you listen to your customer. You hear what your customer has to say and try to make it your own in order to increase your offer. So again, tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, we are meeting for the first time, and we have the opportunity, maybe some are there already in the audience, to explain them about the initiative and to have them explain what and how the initiative could be helpful, not competing with their purchasing departments.
Thank you, Giorgio. That sounds like a pivotal moment indeed, and good luck with that, and of course the importance of identifying really strong language for the people you're trying to engage, so I hope that was helpful with the sales pitch as well in the beginning. I think, Lisa, you wanted to add something to this round as well?
So thank you. So, we've talked about large initiatives with large companies, and I've heard I've mostly heard Giorgio talk about pasta and make me hungry.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I've heard him talk about, this small initiative and some of the challenges. And while, of course, larger initiatives have more convening power and can have potentially a broader impact, I just don't want to sort of minimize the impact that smaller initiatives can have. And so when I was hearing about pivotal moments, I thought about what I consider a collective action initiative that our office, the World Bank Group Integrity Compliance Office, has in place. And I'm not going to talk about our sanctions process because my colleague John Fersant-Wart from the Asian Development Bank is going to speak about it tomorrow, so stay tuned. But we have conditions often imposed for release from World Bank Group sanction. And as part of those conditions, there typically is some type of an integrity compliance element. So a company putting in place enhanced integrity compliance measures in order to be released from that sanction. And in that context, we've developed a mentorship program whereby we ask entities that have been sanctioned by the World Bank Group and have been released, having met their compliance conditions, to mentor other entities that are currently sanctioned and engaging with our office, often SMEs. And so we've had a case, and this was my kind of pivotal moment, where a company had mentored a company in another country, but they shared a similar language, a common language. And so That company, the mentee company, was then released from sanction, having met its compliance conditions, and that company is currently acting as a mentor to an SME in a yet third country with a common language. And so the mentee has become the mentor. And to me, that's small because we're talking about 3 companies, but it is a very important form of collective action. So it can start really small, and from there we can just kind of see how it will build upon itself. So I just wanted to emphasize that, you know, four companies can achieve an awful lot with its effort. And so I really encourage everyone, you know, things start small, and that's kind of what got us all here. And even Basel started not so big compared to what it is now. So, you know, I just wanted to put that out there because you know, based on our own experience, you know, I think I've seen a lot of good that can come from just one company working with another company, and also companies working with their supply chains. So there is a tremendous knock-on effect from even the smallest start. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa, for also sharing some sort of impact story from the World Bank mentoring program. That's really interesting to hear, and I couldn't agree more with sort of, you know, supporting the sort of small start of these things. And you said it's just for companies, but it is almost 80% of the market, so it's all relative, right? Yeah. But so what I think is also very interesting from what we've heard here again is that sort of story of development. And while we see again this variety, we do also hear, and knowing all of your initiatives a little bit myself, those sort of common themes in collective action here as well, of continuous engagement, keeping stakeholders engaged, of course looking at balancing commitment with tangible business benefits or benefits, and clarifying that, having that sort of clear business language, looking at standards, the standards you're setting, and how to achieve them. So I think it's always really interesting to hear that even though they are very different and they look very different, they have different membership, there are these common factors that really make collective action, and that's really great to hear today on the stage as well. We've looked back a little bit now to where you've come from in the development, and now I want to do a sort of final round before we open to questions of positively looking to the future, and just doing a sort of quick round with the panelists here of, you know, what is your hope for your initiative looking forward? And this can be sort of immediate, medium, or long-term future. But not just your initiative, because we know collective action initiatives don't just exist in a vacuum. They exist in a context, of course, but also, and it's always so nice to be reminded about this at this conference and at other conferences, in a community of other initiatives, an ecosystem of collective action. And so if you have any hopes also for that group, for that community, how they can support you or the other way around, I think that would be really nice to kind of have this positive outlook into the future from all of you. And of course, we'll bring in Lisa. Maybe I can ask you to kick us off.
Thank you. For me, I think my hope for the future is we continue the discussion, but also to encourage initiatives, and I'll use Masson as an example, to continue seeking out additional stakeholders. Who else might benefit from this initiative? So in their case now, having this associate membership for SMEs, you know, and who else? Just, you know, think of how else your initiatives might branch out, who might benefit, who might be interested, and just expand them, because that's, again, it starts small, but then they can grow, and then you just see this impact triple-fold, I think, grow triple-fold over time. So that would be my hope. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll just go around the room.
Sure. Yeah, so that's very true. I agree with that completely, and we are seeing a lot of interest actually from SMEs to help them on the journey on compliance. So that's definitely true. One thing that I'm hoping for the collective action ecosystem is that we become more visible to each other. I think the workshop we had here last year in July on how do we do sort of matchmaking between those who seek donor funding and those who offer donor funding, And Basel is, of course, doing a great job in putting us all in the same room. That's one step, but I think we need to be more visible to each other because collective action is still quite new on the agenda. When we talk about the maritime industry, for example, the industry is more than 5,000 years old, and up until 2011, corruption was just the name of the game. You would bring gifts to a new country when you arrived. That was a tradition. So collective action and anti-corruption, we still need to help it emerge. So more visibility and some matchmaking tools would be great.
Yeah, a few things that I would hope for is typical of an anti-corruption compliance approach is that the initial focus is very often on compliance, getting everything in place. But ultimately, I think we all realize that if your compliance system is not supported by ethical culture underpinning that, then it's a catch-up game that you are playing all the time, and it does not really become ingrained into the way in which you do your business. So I hope to see more of that maturing in the initiative. The other hope that I have is that even more players in the banknote industry will join the initiative. But interestingly enough, we had recent approaches also by the coin industry, because the coin industry is not very different. And there's actually no reason, no compelling reason why it can't be open to them as well. And on Wednesday this week in Brussels, we have our annual general meeting, and it will be a point of conversation there. And then I would just like to echo what Jonas just said in terms of our visibility to one another. The three of us had an informal conversation last night at the speakers' dinner, and it was just so valuable, and the things that were learned from there, and it's only the three of us, just think about all the other initiatives, and I would really like to take this opportunity to thank Siemens once again for starting this whole initiative, and I really hope it will live way beyond 2024.
Thank you.
I would say, as a wish, maybe, again, try to make the initiative a little bit larger, maybe if not with other smaller competitors, maybe with the customers themselves. It would be a huge step, also considering that in the global market, various customers are actually SOEs. So this could be a nice tweak. I'm talking about like the China market, for example. All the big industries are ultimately, of course, led or anyway managed by government. And then, as a side wish, I think luckily, as a collective action effort, we are probably one of the few corners in the world who will not be impacted by artificial intelligence. The fact that, I mean, the amount of human interaction, which is crucial, point and center, trust, good judgment, which luckily for the time being artificial intelligence still does not have, remains like pillar and crucial in the initiative. So hopefully we will not be talking about artificial intelligence impact on collective action, which to me will become sort of a nightmare, frankly.
Super, thank you. So collective action is future-proofed from the impacts of AI. That's great. So I would like to take this opportunity now to really open up the floor to either questions directly to the panelists, or also, seeing as we are talking about hopes for the future and also the development of initiatives, if you are one, if you would like to share in a similar way, and that would also be great. I think I see a hand up here.
Hello everyone, I'm Sevda Husseinova, representing State Oil Company of the Republic of Azerbaijan. I'm an ethics and compliance officer. My question is that in your collective action programs, as we talked about, that they are already some years are in the implementation and you have achieved some milestones already. So my question is there any mechanism to measure the effectiveness and the impact? So how do you measure the impact, and if there are any mechanisms? That's my question. And the second question will be, at the level of the stakeholder engagement, how did you achieve to engage the regulatory authorities as well? Thank you.
Thank you. That's 2 for 1. Maybe we can split it up a little bit and just the sort of question on impact and measuring impact, because that could be a whole panel or conference actually in itself. But maybe we can, in this short period of time, just have a sort of quick feedback on how do you define and measure impact. Maybe Dion, it's simplest for you, or also MACN, just to kind of reflect back the question. And then the other question was on engaging of regulatory authorities, which I'm not sure all of you do, so for those who do, maybe you could go ahead and answer. So over to you, Dion.
Yeah, in terms of measuring impact, probably the best indicator is the number of corruption incidents amongst your members. That would always be a very good indicator. If there were many corruption incidents prior to people joining the initiative, what does it look after they have joined? And that is surely one thing that we definitely look at. The other type of measurement might be more of a qualitative measurement, and its idea that has surfaced in the Banknote Ethics Initiative is to do a qualitative study amongst members about what happened in their organizations since they've joined the initiative, to see how the whole anti-corruption effort matured over time, because it's quite clear from the feedback that we get, and also from the feedback that the auditors give us on an ongoing basis, that there are very clear progress and development in terms of sophistication, in terms of detecting and preventing corruption. So that definitely, those 2 things are what I would look at.
Anybody else from the speakers would like to get in on the impact and how you measure it?
Yeah, I mean, I can bring in the cost of corruption study once again. We just released. We rely heavily on data and MACN. We started out by launching our anonymous reporting platform, where we now have collected 60,000 reports in the maritime sector over the past 10 years. That number, to be honest, after spending 12 years in the maritime industry, is just the tip of the iceberg. And the suggestion that 1 in 5 ships meet corruption when they call a port in the imaginary case of Integrinesia is low. There are many countries where the incident rate is 100%. So our statistics, our data is showing a global tendency that there's a drop in corruption in the maritime industry. That's really nice, even though it's just the tip of the iceberg. The cost of corruption study was done independently based on a lot of feedback, interviews, and cost assessments. So a lot of things were taken into consideration. But we really try and pick as much data as we can. We also have mountains of data available that we haven't done any studies on yet. Especially, now I'll use India as an example. Our team is here today. We have 1,500 pre-arrival notices in India, where 35 of them have been escalated as corruption incidents. So that data, we would also be able to show a tendency over time, but it's not something that we have dived into yet. But it's definitely, it's the data that we rely on and the reporting from the members.
Super, thank you. And for the question regarding the involvement of the regulatory bodies, is anybody directly involved?
Yes.
For you? Yeah, I know.
So our senior advisor in India has written two, Mr. Deepak Shetty, who's sitting here today as well, has written two policy change recommendations that have been received by the Department of Shipping in India. Also wrote recommendations to the B20 that was included in the final recommendations to CEOs, I believe it was called. And so we do policy change recommendations. We've also done in Pakistan, for the Pakistan single window, we have recommended a grievance mechanism to incorporate a help desk in the single window system. That is a requirement of IMO. And in Bangladesh, we've done 3, not policy change recommendations, but we've done 3 recommendations in our latest report on how to improve the transparency in the business environment there. That was handed over to the Minister of Maritime Affairs as well.
Super, thank you. And I think that just also showcases that not all collective action initiatives are necessarily trying to engage with the public sector or the authorities at that level. So it very much depends on what you're trying to achieve in your initiative. Are there any, I think we can take one more comment question before we break for lunch. Yes, we have another question there.
Thank you for your insights on different initiatives in public and private sector. But my question was specifically for civil society. So as we are working for a foundation that funds many partners, that could be organizations, ministries, associations across Africa mainly, we wanted to know, as funders, how could we pitch the idea of, or the importance of collective action against corruption to these organizations or our partners, and more specifically, how can we support their efforts in collective action? How can we, for this specific sector? Thank you.
What a great question. Maybe I, as civil society, and where we have a couple of representations here as well on the panel, can maybe just mention that, of course, collective action is focusing on the private sector, but typically, in terms of good practice, there is civil society involved in the facilitation. So, as Georgia was mentioning, for the MTI group, Basel, for example, is the facilitator. So we ensure there's no antitrust, there's no issues. So supporting civil society to be involved and drive and facilitate those initiatives is probably, if you're looking specifically for a CSO angle, the best way to do that, and also really helps drive this sort of more positive way of addressing corruption in terms of prevention rather than the watchdog role that civil society plays in many countries still, to kind of bring them a little bit more into the discussion of being supportive and engaging and facilitating. I don't know if there's any follow-ups maybe from Dion, from your experience on that.
Yeah, in my previous life, I was from civil society, so I was CEO of the Ethics Institute, and we were involved in quite a number of collective action initiatives. And I find that there's an absolutely crucial role to play for your civil society organizations. Very often, especially when government and business are at loggerheads with each other, I think it's typically civil society who can play that honest broker role in order to get them together, but also to monitor. And of course, another area where civil society organizations can contribute a lot is when they have specific expertise in an area where they can advise, whether it's business, whether it is the public sector, on issues that are relevant. And I know even at the Banknote Ethics Initiative, we would from time to time reach out to certain civil society organizations and ask them for advice on what's the best way of dealing with agent commissions, for example. And I know at a certain point we've even engaged with the Basel Institute on integrity pacts and things like that. So that expertise that we have in certain civil society organizations can make a very, very important contribution.
Super, would you like to add, Lisa, as well?
And also, with the multilateral development banks, we engage with civil society organizations as well. I know when Dion was at Ethics Institute, we had an event with Ethics Institute and the African Development Bank, and I think having that voice from civil society, I think it was already said, it's not always viewed as a neutral, but it can be a neutral because it's not government sponsored, it's not public sector sponsored. So it gave us a platform to invite government, to invite private sector in a more neutral forum with civil society as the convener. So we also look for opportunities to engage with civil society to promote collective action and anti-corruption initiatives.
All right, I think we have one more question from this side of the room. Yeah, we have time for only one more. Okay.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Deepak Shetty. I'm currently Senior Advisor to the Maritime Anti-Corruption and Head of India Operations. I was a former career civil servant. I was Secretary in the Government of India in the Ministry of Shipping and also served as Director General of Shipping. To the point, Dion, that you brought up that, often the paradigm is, it's assumed that, there's a surmise that the private sector and the government, the public sector are at loggerheads. It really isn't. Now, just to sort of reflect on what we do in India, of course, I bring that 37 years of expertise in the government. So when I pitch in today the MACN as a platform, as an institutional platform to the stakeholders, and in particular to the public sector, it's a very simple pitch. I tell them that, look, I'm not your adversary or your foe. If you subscribe to zero tolerance to corruption, so do we, because we bring the virtue of being a not-for-profit maritime industry association. So we bring that, we act as a bridge of trust with absolutely no agenda to push, no axe to grind, except that we are with the same common cause of business integrity. Just one final other point that I wanted to also bring as a nuance here is that it's often assumed that, the big companies, when you get into collective action, and when you talked about the SMEs, that you needed to sort of co-opt them also into this space, it's often forgotten, and this is arising from our empirical experience, that the big companies at the global level, while they may subscribe to this as a proposition, but the trickle-down effect at the local level, at the regional level, I'm sorry to say that there's a yawning gap. The local regional heads are simply unaware of what's happening on the ground level. So while somebody might become a member of any of these initiatives, collective action initiatives, at the end of the day, if it does not drill down at the field level, at the operational levels. So even in a big company, the impact it's anything to do which is not really desired, so to speak. And just one final point is that you need to have institutional frameworks, mechanisms which are, let's say, in the form of advisory committees, or let's say consultative committees, where you co-opt both the public sector and the private sector, bring them on board, have regular interactions, which we do in India. And it's served us extremely well. And I think we have modeled it on a public-private partnership model. We have a very senior serving career civil servant who heads this advisory committee of MAC in India. And we have 6 other members representing by far the largest and the most representative organizations in the maritime domain. And the last 1.25 years of the existence of this platform has been a huge learning experience where we find that this is a very inclusive, participative, and far more receptive mechanism. I think that's served us extremely well and has led to the kind of success that we've been able to have. Thank you. Just more of a experience sharing. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for your questions. I have an eye on time. It is lunchtime now. As a quick, before you all head out, we will be back in this room at 2 p.m. And so now I'd like to thank my panelists for all of their contributions. Thank you also for your questions. And my main takeaway is really that what was mentioned earlier here, it's important for us to meet, it's important for us to share and come together more in this community. So let's continue doing this over lunch and later on in the day. Thank you, everyone.